at Wimbledon 2026.
He lifted the Wimbledon trophy. He celebrated on center court. And within minutes, the same three words started trending again. Doping, ban, cover-up. Jannik Sinner just won his second straight Wimbledon title. And instead of pure celebration, his name is once again being dragged through one of the most controversial doping cases in modern tennis history. A case that never technically ended. It just went quiet for a while. Stick around because we're breaking down exactly why this story refuses to die and why even some of Sinner's fellow players think it never will. Let's rewind to where this all actually started. March 2024, the Indian Wells Masters. Jannik Sinner tests positive for a banned anabolic steroid called clostebol. Not once, twice in the span of 8 days. Once in competition and once out of competition, ahead of the Miami Open. For most players, a positive test for a banned steroid ends in one place: a lengthy suspension, a public trial by anti-doping tribunal, and a permanent asterisk on their career. That's what happened to players like Simona Halep. That's what happened to Britain's Tara Moore, who spent nearly 2 years fighting to clear her name. Sinner's case went differently, very differently. And the way it went differently is exactly why, more than 2 years later, this story is still following him around every single time he wins something big, including now, a Wimbledon title. So how did Sinner avoid the fate that's ended other players' careers? His explanation centered on his own team. According to the case, Sinner's then physiotherapist, Giacomo Naldi, had been using an over-the-counter spray called Trofodermin to treat a cut on his own finger. That spray contained clostebol. Over the course of 9 days, Naldi continued giving Sinner physio treatments with his bare hands after applying it, and in doing so, unintentionally transferred trace amounts of the banned substance onto his skin. The International Tennis Integrity Agency investigated, accepted this explanation, and initially cleared Sinner entirely, ruling he bore no fault or negligence. Case closed, at least for a moment, except it didn't stay closed. The World Anti-Doping Agency disagreed with that ruling and appealed it directly to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, pushing for a suspension of 1 to 2 years, the kind of ban that would have wiped out an entire prime season of Sinner's career, including multiple Grand Slams. Instead of letting that appeal go to a full hearing, Sinner's team negotiated a settlement. 3 months, 9 February to 4th of May. A ban timed almost perfectly to avoid every single Grand Slam on the calendar that year, while still technically counting as a punishment. That timing is the entire reason this story refuses to fade away. Think about what actually happened here. Sinner missed the Qatar Open, the Dubai Championships, Indian Wells, the tournament where he originally tested positive, the Miami Open, where he was the defending champion, Monte Carlo, Madrid. But he didn't miss a single major. Not the Australian Open, which he'd already won before the ban was announced. Not the French Open, not Wimbledon, not the US Open. To critics, that's not a coincidence. That's a settlement engineered to protect the sport's biggest events and its biggest star at the exact same time. The moment the settlement became public, the reaction from fans was immediate and brutal. Some of the language used online was genuinely harsh. Accusations that Sinner should be a man and stop blaming his team. Accusations of arrogance in how his statement was worded, and comparisons drawn instantly to lesser-known players who'd received far harsher punishments for similar or even less severe violations. Sweden's Mikael Weimer was suspended 18 months by the Court of Arbitration for Sport for missing 3 out-of-competition tests. Tara Moore served 19 months even after a tribunal accepted that contaminated meat had caused her positive tests. Compare that to 3 months, perfectly scheduled around every Grand Slam on the calendar, and you can understand why so many fans felt something didn't add up. And it wasn't just anonymous fans online. Multiple players on tour spoke up. Nick Kyrgios called it a sad day for the sport, saying flatly that fairness in tennis doesn't exist. Novak Djokovic raised pointed questions about the handling of the case, suggesting the entire process lacked transparency, and specifically noting that higher-ranked players can access legal representation that most of the tours simply can't afford. Not every reaction was critical. Some players, including Feliciano Lopez, publicly defended Sinner, arguing that the science behind the contamination explanation was sound and that he shouldn't be treated as guilty of something the evidence didn't actually support. Sinner himself has never hidden his frustration with how this played out. He said directly that he doesn't wish what he went through on anyone innocent, and that he struggled to accept 3 months away from the sport while knowing, in his own words, that he hadn't done anything wrong. But here's the thing about controversies like this one. It doesn't matter how many times Sinner defends himself. It doesn't matter how technically sound the contamination explanation is. Once a story like this attaches itself to a champion's name, explaining it away almost never fully works, because the doubt itself becomes part of the story permanently. Fast forward to this year's Wimbledon final. Sinner beats Alexander Zverev in 4 sets to defend his title. By every measure, this should have been a pure celebration. His 5th Grand Slam, his 2nd straight at the All England Club, cementing his place as the best player in the world. Instead, almost immediately, critics resurfaced the doping case, arguing openly that he shouldn't have even been on those grass courts, representing the sport at its highest level. The framing was blunt and unforgiving, a champion whose biggest title defenses keep happening under the shadow of a case that never got the full public hearing so many other players have had to go through. And here's why this specific pattern keeps repeating itself every single time Sinner wins something big. Major titles generate major headlines. Major headlines mean more eyes on his career, more retrospectives written about how he got to where he is. And the doping case is simply too significant a chapter in that story to leave out. Every time he climbs higher, the case gets pulled back into the spotlight right alongside him. It happened after the Italian Open, his first tournament back from the ban. It happened again after his French Open final appearance. And now it's happened at Wimbledon, arguably the biggest stage in the sport. This is exactly what Novak Djokovic predicted would happen, in comments he made directly comparing Sinner's situation to his own controversial deportation from Australia back in 2022. Djokovic said the cloud around Sinner's case would follow him for the rest of his career, the same way the cloud of his own COVID vaccine controversy has followed him. He said that over time these things fade, but they never fully disappear, because there will always be a group of people determined to bring it back up. Watching that prediction play out in real time, right after a Wimbledon title, is exactly the kind of moment that makes this story worth talking about again. Let's take the critics' side seriously, because the discrepancy at the center of this really is hard to ignore. Tennis has a documented history of handing out much harsher punishments to players with fewer resources and less star power. Mikael Weimer, Tara Moore. Players who didn't have access to the kind of legal team that can negotiate a settlement instead of facing a full tribunal hearing. When the sport's biggest star tests positive for a banned substance twice and walks away with a 3-month ban perfectly timed around every major on the calendar, it's completely reasonable for people to ask whether money and status shaped that outcome more than the actual facts of the case did. Add in the fact that the settlement bypassed a full public hearing before the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and you have every ingredient needed for a legitimate transparency concern, not just internet outrage for its own sake. But here's the side that gets lost when this story resurfaces every few months. The scientific explanation behind the contamination wasn't just accepted because Sinner is famous. It was investigated and independently verified. Trace amounts of clostebol transferred through repeated skin contact from a physiotherapist treating his own cut is a documented and medically plausible chain of contamination. WADA itself acknowledged that Sinner gained no competitive advantage from the substance and bore no meaningful fault for how it entered his system. And it's worth remembering what Sinner actually lost in all of this. His longtime physiotherapist and fitness trainer both let go in the fallout. Months of his prime playing years spent under a legal and media microscope instead of focused purely on tennis. A permanent asterisk that, as we just watched at Wimbledon, follows him into every single major win for the rest of his career, regardless of what any tribunal ruled. So here's the real question. Is this ongoing scrutiny a fair, necessary check on a sport that has historically protected its biggest stars? Or has Sinner effectively been handed a life sentence of suspicion for a case that was investigated, ruled on, and settled through the sport's own official processes? Because whichever side of that you land on, one thing is now undeniable. Djokovic was right. This cloud isn't going anywhere. It's simply going to keep reappearing every single time Jannik Sinner lifts another trophy. So where does this actually leave Jannik Sinner? He's the world number 1, a 5-time Grand Slam champion, the reigning back-to-back Wimbledon champion. By every competitive measure, he's playing the best tennis of his life, right in the middle of what should be remembered as the peak of his career. But every single one of those achievements now comes attached to a permanent asterisk that no ruling, no settlement, and no amount of dominant tennis has managed to erase. Some fans see that as exactly the accountability a superstar should face. Others see it as a punishment that never truly ends, no matter what the official record says. What's clear is that Sinner isn't just competing against Alcaraz, Zverev, and the rest of the tour anymore. He's competing against a story that resurfaces every time he wins. And based on everything we've seen since that Wimbledon trophy, that's a match he may never actually get to finish. So here's what we want to know from you. Do you think Sinner has more than paid his dues and deserves to move past this? Or do you think this scrutiny is fair, given how differently other players have been treated for similar violations? Drop your take in the comments, because this is one of the most divisive debates in tennis right now, and we want to hear where you actually stand. If you think it's time to let this story go, smash that like button. If you think the doubts are completely justified, let us know why down below. And if you don't want to miss the next time this story resurfaces, because based on everything we just covered, you know it will, make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell turned on. Thanks for watching. This has been Tennis Next Point, and we'll see you in the next one.